What's up, wild people? So it's about a month away from opening season here in Georgia, bow season, and I'm here at my one of my favorite outdoor ranges, which is over at Charlie Elliott, gearing up my new bow that I got. I have my recurve as well as this new bow that I got. It's called the Bear Cruiser G2. So I sighted it in at the range that I usually go to, the indoor range. And it's pretty good and sighted in for 20, but I want to see how much more of a distance I can get and if it's really sighted and tuned for yards out to 30 and 40. I am kicking myself though because I forgot my rangefinder back at the house, and something in my mind told me to pack it last night, and I didn't listen to the instinct. But yeah, I am pretty much at a decent range right now, about 20 yards from each one of these targets, and I know that elk back there is about 40, so I'm gonna try my cruiser out there. And excuse the gunshots over there, that's the gun range, but I'm over at the archery range. And yeah, let's get to it. So this is my Bear Cruiser G2, and I'm gonna try out first at about 20 yards. So each one of these targets are about 10 to 20 yards out. Like if you can see this boar down here, that boar is about 10 yards. So anything under that, I'll actually be using my 20-yard sight. Landed a really good shot there, just behind the shoulders. I'm gonna try for that cougar over there. It's pretty good. Not quite where I wanted it, but... And that's the weird thing about shooting up elevated. Things look like it's, especially if it's a further distance out, it kind of looks like it's just within, but it's not really. It ended up going a lot lower. But I'll talk about a little bit of that in a second. And I'm gonna try for the pig again. Right in the kisses. And the cougar. In the leg. Probably was moving a little bit on that one. Just to give you an idea of my setup here, Charlie Elliott does a very good job of trying to simulate a lot of things that you would encounter out there in the wilderness. So this would be an ideal way to hang your tree stand. So I'm kind of up on a deck here and looking down, of course, on some of the targets. So it's like a little practice area. You can come up here and practice putting your safety line up and sitting on the tree stand. But I'm gonna go get my arrows now. As you can see, I made a really good shot on this boar. Now, one thing I will say about a lot of these targets, they're not absolute, but they do give you a good idea about the quarry that you're hunting. So with boar, this animal is pretty much built like a little tank. So if you think of them in that way, a tank with a Spartan shield being a shoulder, you kind of always want to make sure that you're aiming low at the vitals and a little behind the shoulder here. So ideally, the perfect shot would be somewhere right here. Now see that the target, if you see that the target has like these little holes, that's fine. But say if somebody is first time hunting a boar and they shoot it here in the shoulder and they think, okay, that's the perfect thing, you would actually have to have a really powerful bow and a really strong broadhead to pierce through that shoulder there. So it's always ideal to get just behind the shoulder blade and a little low because of how this animal is built. It's built to where all this up here is a muscle. So that's one thing I try to say to certain people that's asking me how do they start out. I would really say know the anatomy of your animal and where to shoot and so on and so forth, because this animal, unlike a whitetail, is very, very durable, and you would definitely have to have a good broadhead for piercing anything like its hide and its shoulder. Moving on to the cougar, I made a pretty decent shot on this spider web. Now, I personally don't hunt anything that I don't eat, so I don't care to shoot like any other predatory animals, not even coyotes. I know a lot of other hunters get a kick out of that, but not me. But still, same thing. The vital area of a lot of animals are ideally here. So even if you were to shoot a cougar in its shoulder, it'll probably do some good damage. But again, just a little behind the shoulder is a better point. So sorry, I didn't even have the camera aimed. But yeah, anywhere behind here is really good. So this target here gives you a good ideal shot of where to shoot. I probably shot it somewhere where it would hit the liver of the animal and pierce the stomach, but it's still good nonetheless. Obviously, this shot right here was where I flinched a bit. I probably moved my bow a little too soon, moving it down, which is probably why I missed that shot right there. Got it in the leg, but the first shot on it was pretty decent. Okay, next I'm gonna try for the elk back there, but that's about 40 yards, I'd say, from the last time I was here, which was a while ago, and looks relatively in the same spot. So what I'm going to do is aim for the 40, which is my third sight pin. But actually, I'll do something a little bit in between that, just in case, because I don't have many arrows to spare. Okay, so it definitely is at 40. It ended up hitting the animal in the leg. Not sure how far or how well you can see it filming on my GoPro, but it did hit in the leg, which means it's 40 yards out. But I kind of sighted it a little bit in between the 30 and the 40, which gave me about 45 yards in distance. So I'll aim more so on point with the 40-yard range. And that was exactly where I wanted it. So it seems like my bow is pretty good and sighted in for long distances. Even if this bow here can go up to about 50, I personally wouldn't shoot anywhere past 40. That's just my comfortability. Many other people, I've seen people's bows that can go up to like 60 yards. And I mean, that's great. I kind of wish I could do it, but it's almost like I'm not pulling that much poundage behind this bow. It's only about 45 where mine is aimed. So my arrow will start to lose a little speed, and I probably won't get enough penetration if I go too far over 40. So with me pulling 45, I stay in the 40 range. There we go. That was even better. All right, so this one was a little more favorable. And golly, I cannot remember. Oh, that's not even my arrow. I was like, I cannot remember making this shot. And then I look, I'm like, oh, that's not my arrow, but okay, somebody else's arrow. You know, it's kind of funny because, like, who needs an arrow shop when all you got to do is go to the archery range, and you find like arrows galore everywhere. But here is a pretty ideal shot. Of course, this is an elk. It's made just kind of like a deer, but bigger. And this is the vital area. So the vital areas are pretty on point with this one. Like I say, again, any animal, depending on how you're shooting, this is a broadside shot. So this is actually perfect. It just depends. Personally, I like to stay away from the shoulder area and try to get just behind the shoulder because a little more exposed, a little more thin meat. But this here is still perfect. Perfect. You got the shoulder of the animal here, and then you have the vitals just back here. This kind of would have been a heart shot, and of course all this would have been the lung shot. And somewhere up in between the heart and the lungs, you got the liver. So just a little bit behind here would have been ideal with this arrow piercing the liver. Now, obviously, I made a bad shot on the leg here, and that was my first shot testing out. So I'll go ahead and pull that. But the rest of these at 40 yards is pretty good. Pretty darn good. A lot of people, there are other points on the animal you can shoot, but I would not personally recommend it, especially if you're just now starting out. You would have to be a top of the line pro to really just make some of these shots. And just like on a whitetail, you can kind of aim. There's a soft spot somewhere in the somewhere along the front side of the elk. I have seen it done, and it does drop them like that, you know. I have seen it done, and it's not a bad place to shoot, but it is a very difficult place to shoot. And what's happening, you're shooting right between the shoulder blades, and there's a soft spot. If the deer was water, if the elk was water, I'd show you, but you kind of get the picture. There's a soft spot right up in between there that you can shoot, and it goes straight through, pierces pretty much everything that's around in this area. Okay, so next I'll be shooting at the black bear down there, and there we go. If I were to make a shot on a bear, this is pretty much ideal. Same thing with the vitals, a little behind the shoulder, and kind of down just a hair bit. I only have 2 arrows for my recurve, but I haven't shot from a tree in a long time with this. Just over his back. There we go. Okay, so this was an excellent shot on this hog with my recurve. The first one, at a tilted angle, it went right over his back. But when I straightened it up, pretty much hit right where it needed to go. A little useful information. I'm just gonna walk the circle here and see what are the targets they got out here. All right, so my next target is an American bison or buffalo. Not the best shot. I'll be tracking him for a little bit probably. That was a better shot. As you can see, if you've never seen one before, which hopefully you have, depending on how old you are, all of this is really thick fur. Really thick fur. So imagine probably getting your arrow tangled in that. So it's always ideal with any, of course, just behind the shoulder. Nothing has changed pretty much. All the animals, the anatomy is pretty similar. I mean, I don't know any animals whose heart is probably back there in its rear end. So usually all your good vitals are gonna be somewhere close up in here. Maybe a little forward, maybe a little down, but that's a general area. All of this too, really thick muscle. So one thing I really want to go ahead and bring up with any ruminant animal, hoofed animal, probably minus predatory, but that's a different ballpark for me. You never, ever, I don't know who gives this idea, but it's wrong. And I know, I'm saying this for a sheer fact, it's wrong, it's wrong. Don't ever, with a bow and arrow, at least, aim for the head. Now, you're talking a lot of ruminant animals like deer, moose, whitetail are deer, but mule deer, bison, they have a very thick cranium, and that cranium is built like a helmet. And it's built like that for a reason, because that's how they fight. And they use their head, especially the buffalo, primarily for just shoveling away thick snow or thick brush to get towards their food. So the head is very, very broad. And somewhere up in here, you got a lot of muscle, you got a lot of fur, and you have a really, really thick cranium. Have you ever seen how these guys fight? It's like, wow. So your arrow, don't care what poundage you are pulling, it's not thick enough to penetrate this cranium to kill it effectively. Now, as ethical hunters, you do want to make sure that you're getting, that you're, you're dropping the animal at a fast pace, because what happens is not even just on an ethical or moral standpoint of just dropping it fast and, not prolonging its suffering, but it has a little something to do with the scientific method of it, that adrenaline gets to kicking in, and that produces this type of hormone that produces throughout the meat, and it kind of makes the meat taste a little weird, so the longer that goes on, you'll get a different quality of tasting meat when the animal is prolonging its time to expire. So if you look ahead, that's a boar, so I'm going to take a quartering away shot, and that was actually perfect. The more you do it, the more you get better at gauging how much of a distance you have between you and your target. Okay, that was a little low. It's beautiful, just beautiful. That is pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. Actually, pretty darn excellent. I really like quartering away shots on hogs, simply because there's little to no risk. The only other risk I could say if it turns around and then, okay, well, you just shot it in the butt, which actually, interesting fact, it's not on this target, but I have seen it on certain other targets. And again, what I was talking about with the deer, it's a very difficult area to shoot, but if you are expert at it, you can pretty much kill it. But on the rear end of the hog is pretty much another soft spot, and they call it the Texas kill shot. And what it is, there's a specific area of the hog, you shoot up and through it, and you get all of that spine and just drop it. I've heard of people doing it. I have not seen a video of people doing it, but the way it was explained to me sounds pretty badass. But yeah, that's what it's called, the Texas kill shot. You might want to look into it a little more, but it's not on this target. It would be kind of like a round area here. Just shoot that arrow right up and through the spine. Okay, guys, so I never hear any hunter talk about where to get the perfect shot on this animal, but it is very, very vital that you get the perfect shot and none else on this animal, or you're up shit creek. Now, I actually prefer if you shoot this one with a gun, but if you're badass like that, shoot it with a bow, but you better believe, better not miss, you better get it right. I didn't want a copyright strike, so I just hummed it for you. Leave a comment. How did I do? Okay, so obviously we're like 60 million years away from this, and I think it is so hilarious they put this out here. It's not my first time seeing it, but you can dream. Yeah, but based on what I have learned from Jurassic Park, I think this is a good shot, I would assume, because when you see the animal breathe, it looks very shallow in that area. It's like I should shoot it somewhere right here. But even so, I'm pretty sure the anatomy, if you look at any reptile, like a alligator, it's going to be about the same. Now, how thick the skin is, if you ever come across one of these, some strange way, I would say you better get it right. Okay, but a headshot wouldn't be quite bad on this, to be honest. Probably wouldn't be that bad if you got a gun. If you got a bow and arrow, yeah, I'd take my best bet and go here. All right, back to the present. If there is any animal on earth that you do not want to piss off by missing a shot, I would definitely say it is the moose. This is I'm not going to shoot at this one, but this is relatively the size that you're going to get with a moose. It's about as big as a horse, if not taller. And these things have been known to attack trains. So they get pretty aggressive even if they are shy. But you can see where some of the other people been nailing into it. Like I said, it's pretty much redundant at this point. You know where the vitals are. Try to miss the shoulder, especially on an animal of this size, and you'll be fine. Wow, they do a really good job at camouflaging a lot of these targets. But straight ahead of me is a turkey. You're not always going to have a clear, perfect shot at whatever animal that you're facing. I mean, it'll be great, but a lot of times you're going to have a lot of sticks and twigs and whatever else in the way, and you just have to make do with the environment around you. If you can move around it, that's fine, but a lot of times your arrow, it might bounce off of whatever branch, or I've had that done before actually. Might bounce off and change the flight path of the arrow. So I try to make sure I have as clearest you know, path as possible, but this is just about it. But this is a turkey, and it looks about within 20 yards. So yeah, definitely within 20 yards. And turkeys have really good eyesight. All birds have really good eyesight. Well, many of them. Can't say all. I'm pretty sure there's some species out there that beg to differ, but turkeys have pretty good eyesight. So concealment is really the key when hunting them. The best thing is you don't have to worry about scent killer. Their sense of smell isn't so bright, but or keen, but their eyesight definitely is. So if you're hunting at a ground blind, hunting from a tree stand is not ideal because they will look up, unlike a deer whose eyes are pretty much centered to the ground. But turkeys, they roost in trees, so nothing's stopping them from looking above. But this is the ideal. Actually, this is pretty accurate. I wouldn't say ideal. Ideal would mean like halfway. But this is pretty much very accurate of how you want to shoot a turkey. For the simple fact, all this is not even a solid body. When a tom pulls his feathers up like that, it's basically strutting. It's displaying that this is his territory, or these are his females, whatever else. And all that, if you hit anywhere but the center, it's pretty much going to be feathers. And you're just going to shoot right through it. So just because it's the whole bird and it's a solid bird, it's not the solid bird. So hitting it somewhere at dead center is the way to go. Now, I have seen some people to where they like to decapitate the animal. And as you can see with this decoy, yeah, a lot of people here has been doing that. So there you go. I'd say this is about 30 yards. Nope. And there goes my arrow. This is why you should have a rangefinder. There goes the other arrow. Golly. That's not 30 yards then. Even if I'm gonna buy new arrows, here's the second one. Really don't have any to be donating to Charlie Elliott here. So my calculations were way off, and it looks like everybody's calculations be way off, because I do not see where this has been dented by many hunters. So I am going to try this at the 40. I do believe this is about 40 yards, so I'll put in between the 30 and the 40 pin. It's probably more like 35. And there we go. Good shot. All right, let's check it out. I lined it up pretty nicely. Three's the charm. So yeah, this is a pretty good spot. On a deer, you don't have to worry so much about the shoulder. The shoulder of this deer and whitetails in general it's going to be kind of curved. So you got this big flat part right here. It's pretty thin, but at the same time, it's still a shoulder blade. So I'd be safe enough to try to miss that all together. But it goes in a curve. So, I mean, you hit the deer's shoulder, you got a pretty decent chance of really just doing some damage. But I have seen, especially with bucks, they survive that and they're just walking around now with an arrow in their shoulder. So it's always still a good rule of thumb to try to get just behind it. I know also you might want to practice at different angles. When I got my deer last year, I was 25 feet up in the air, or 25 feet up in the tree, rather, and he was 26 yards out. He came in, gave me a perfect broadside shot, and I took it. But I had to aim a little lower because I was in the tree, and it kind of messes up your angle. It's kind of like when I just said that I thought that I was about 30 yards away from over there in the distance, but I'm really about 40, a little further than what I thought. Well, being up in a tree can change your perspective too. So you really got to just play around with it in order to get good with it. But yeah, I had to aim a little lower. And it wasn't just because of the height that I had to aim a little lower than I would have if I was on the ground and at close range. I had to do that simply because if I were to hear a gunshot, my body's initial reaction would be to duck first and then run, to potentially dodge whatever it is I just heard. And that's with every creature across the board. Every animal is going to do the little, even if it's a slight duck, they're still going to duck and run. So a lot of times what deer would do, they would duck and the arrow misses them completely. And I've had this happen many times, really, on the recurve. They can hear that arrow coming because with the deer, its proximity, like our peripheral vision, their eyes are on the side of the head and their ears are constantly twitching. So even if they were to turn their head, they can still hear everything that's here and see everything that's behind them. The wisp of that arrow is something that's unnatural to them. And of course, they will hear it coming and they will duck. So, or sometimes they'll see it last minute. And you'll be surprised, some of them will dodge it. But yeah, when I was getting my first deer or my first buck, he did duck because I was aiming here just below. But when he did that, I ended up getting a perfect shot right through the lungs. Actually, that's the heart, but kind of through the lungs. So it's not a guarantee all the time they will, but it is a higher chance that they will. So it's just a great rule of thumb to kind of, straighten that out. Okay guys, that's pretty much it for this video. If you like it, leave it a thumbs up. Got something to say, leave a comment. But pretty much the video was supposed to be educational, just for a couple of new hunters out there that's interested and but they don't quite know. I would urge anybody, if you're gonna hunt something, know about that animal, know where to shoot it. It's pretty much a no-brainer, but I have heard of hunters going after something and not knowing anything about the animal that they're hunting. It's just kind of weird. But I'm by no means an expert, so if there's something in this video that you guys may want to share your expert advice or whatever else, drop a comment below. And yeah, I was gonna do a little bit of scouting today around this area, but it's getting pretty late and I gotta take care of some other things elsewhere. So not gonna get to that today, but definitely I'll be doing a video on that. I plan to scout for deer, but the season is a couple of weeks away, so I got plenty of time. But all right, that's it for this video, guys. Until next time, stay wild.